Hype is a mixed bag. It can get us excited for something that we have either waited for a long time or just heard about from the ether of the internet. And it's easy to jump on the hype train without a second's thought and get carried away with how fast and high this beast can go. But just like how satisfying it is for the thing we are hyped about to reach the height of our expectations, just as crushing is it when the only direction from the hype train is a nosedive into the ground. And sometimes there's a pit where the ground used to be. What I'm saying is that you should be careful with hype. It is fine to recommend something, but do be careful to not oversell it, or it's failing to reach the person you're hyping it up to's expectations can impact it negatively. Even if the product is fine, not reaching expectations can bring it from fine to garbage in the consumer's eyes. And why am I saying this? Because this manga was hyped up for me, and now I have to review it without letting the unfulfilled hype cloud my opinion. The time has finally come to take a look at Kazuto Okada's Sundome. Hello my brothers and sisters, my name is Daidarius and welcome to the review of Sundome. Now before I get into the background info of this manga, I might as well address the pronunciation of the manga's title. Sundome is a Japanese word which means stopping the moment before, and given the premise of this manga, that makes perfect sense. So it being a Japanese word means no Sundome or Sundome, just Sundome. Now I'm not gonna gatekeep the pronunciation of this manga's title. It was more like me just shining some light on it. You can pronounce it however you want, but Sundome. Now, Sundome was written and drawn by Kazuto Okada and was released between December 2005 and October 2009. It was then later released in 8 volumes, which was then translated by Yen Press between January 2008 and until December 2010. Now, these volumes are extremely hard to get out of this recording since Yen Press no longer prints them, and you will either have to buy them used or pay hundreds of dollars as well as sell your left kidney to buy them new. Regarding the volumes, they are fine quality with the first pages in each of them being in color. And a fair warning, I will censor a lot of these images since this is not a manga for kids, but back to the volumes. They have one major flaw. The spine work is horrendous. Much of the text is in there and it forces you to pry it open and could end up damaging the volume. So do be aware of that when reading it. Now just to emphasize here, this label right here is not to be taken lightly. It might not be a hentai, but it still has adult and erotic scenes and panels. You will get intimate knowledge of how a tent forms around our protagonist erected schlong, but never more than just a bulge. The same goes for the girls. Only clothes wrapped tightly around the girls' nether regions, but never fully revealed. Luckily it has more gore-going than that, but I cannot stress enough, this is not for kids. I will try to minimize the amount of images that I have to censor with the infamous black box, but thou haveth been warned. The story of Sundome is simple. We follow Hideo Eiba and his adventures with the Roman club that grants its members vast connections and possibilities in different careers, with the only obligation being no drop of the V-card. To accomplish this, its members bestowing of 4 boys watches and reads the scientific definition of a fuck ton of porn, as well as engulf in the associated activity of self-pleasure to a manic degree. One day, Aiba meets the new girl in class, Kurumi Sanaha, and she not only joins the Roman club together with Kyogo, whom I dubbed Boobs Mackenzie, but she also starts a submissive relationship with Aiba. Or Aiba submits to Kurumi while knowing she will never have sex with him. Ever. The story then focuses on Aiba's journey to better himself, doing activities with the Roman club and discovering more about Kurumi. This might not be the story you expect. There's not much more to the story, but considering it's only 8 volumes, then that is not really a surprise. A lot of focus has been given to the sexual discoveries of Aiba as he tries to get more intimate with Kurumi, with various success. There's a B-plot of Kurumi's life/secret, but I will touch upon that later in the review. First, it is time to dive into the art. The art of Sundome is a mixed bag on all accounts. Most of it is of an amateurish nature with simple yet quote-unquote bad design. Especially in the first volume, most of the backgrounds and specifically the characters feels incomplete and something I, as an unprofessional, would draw. And I can't draw for shit. This drags the manga down since the story doesn't hold up in the beginning. It tries, however, to compensate for this by drawing most of the scenes with the Roman cop with the classic manga spoof art style. This does lessen the bad art a bit, but it gets old extremely quickly. However, that does not mean all the art in here is bad. When Okada wants to, he can draw some stunning images, and they often come when something impactful is happening. He often uses gray tones to indicate that the tone has shifted toward the sexual, and you do pick up on it quickly. A lot of care and passion is put into some of these panels. One could argue that the bad art style strengthens the great one, but I would say it does the opposite. It highlights what could have been done with the rest of the manga. Now, you might seem that I'm just hating the art in this manga, and to some extent I do. However, it is more the laziness of it that irritates me, especially since Okada has shown on multiple occasions that he is capable of drawing stunning art when he actually wants to. That, mixed in with the bad choices of camera angles, makes it feel like a horny teenager just drew this, but I will get more into that in my likes and dislikes. Just for now, let it be known that I'm not really a fan of 90% of the art in here. As I did with my Salon reviews, shameless self-plug right up there, I will start with my dislikes and end on my likes so we can end this review on a positive note. First off, the story is extremely predictable. In fact, I wrote notes while reading this manga for my review, and in the third volume I predicted the ending, which the manga then tries to make a big surprise of. In general, it highlights what wants to be a surprise later on, long before it gets to the reveal. This wouldn't be a bad thing if not for the fact that these reveals are played up to be a big thing. Now, this manga is of the ecchi category, which explains the sexual content. This is fine, and I shouldn't expect anything else from that type of manga. But even if this is my first tango with this type of manga category, the sexualized panels are in a complete poor taste. As I stated earlier, the camera angles has one mission and one mission only, to get either panty shots or sneak a nipple view. It does feel like a horny teenager drew this. And speaking of nipples, bras do not exist in this universe at all, and the girls' tops rarely fits them, so I hope you like boob shots in your manga, because breasts are escaping left and right to make it all seem more edgy. Also, camel toes. When girls are in shorts, you should expect to see the hooves of the bi-humped animal to appear. And I know these black squares doesn't prove anything, but take my word for it. Black squares equals not safe for work, uncensored. There's fan service, and then there is gimme the boobs service. Guess where this ranks? When you mix that with the insist of pushing a sexual scene between Aiba and Kuromi in almost every single chapter, then you have a bad flow for the pacing. These are more often than not badly done and makes everything feel cringy. And when you top it off with an extremely rushed ending, especially the last chapter, then this manga is guaranteed for disaster. And that would be the case, but it is not all bad. If it was, then this review would have been much more disappointed driven. Not all the sexual driven scenes are bad paced or bad executed. The one in chapter 51 where a bathtub is involved is the first genuinely good one through and through. Here the subject is handled with respect, but still leaves room for exploration and discovery. There is still room for the established humor and sexual tendencies that the manga strives in, but it feels less cringy and desperate. This is what the manga should have much more of to elevate it from its current state. There are more of these great sexual scenes, especially involving Boot Mackenzie, but I won't spoil them here. And speaking of her, the first downright great chapter of this manga is focused on her. Chapter 25. Again showing what this could have been had the rest met these standards. I could go on and on about the good and bad things in here because I have a lot to say, but then we would be here all day. A quick fire round would be Bad humor is overdone and a bit bad. Aiba's sexual tendency is on the cusp of being a sexual predator, especially towards the end. And Aiba's continued usage of saying sorry diminishes his character growth, which the manga wants to focus on. Good. The evolving camaraderie is done well. The relationship between Aiba and Kurumi is evolving believable. And volume 8 is more or less without problems. Now to sum it up, this manga was a mixed bag. That much is clear considering my likes and dislikes. I still think that the masturbation scene in the hospital, take that out of context, was distastefully misplaced. The same goes with these masturbation scenes on the beach. And the over-reliance on sexual content diminishes the story that is being told in here. However, the good things in here are standouts. Most members of the Roman club evolves, especially Fisheye right here. I was actually more invested in his character arc than I was in Aiba's. Their adventures with the club was, if nothing else, entertaining, and you do end up getting used to the humor and art style, if not a bit late. The mystery of Kurumi's life/past is fine, even though it is predictable. It gives her character a lot of depth and explains on why she insists on Aiba better himself, as well as not letting him completely into her life. Without a doubt, one of, if not the best aspect of this manga. Now, this manga was hyped up for me for over a year, and when it didn't reach my expectation, I was ready to rip it a new one. But after letting that disappointment dwell a bit, I looked at the full story with fresh and unbiased eyes, because I do feel that it deserves some praise. There's a mystery in here. Granted, I call it way before the story actually wanted me to, but it does give the story more life than had it just been about Aiba wanting to nail Kurumi. And given its length of only 8 volumes, I will say that it is actually worth picking up. And even though the last chapter is rushed, it still ends on a good note and sums up the story as a whole. So, I would say that Sundome, it is worth buying and reading in standard edition. I have a feeling that when I actually reread Sundome at some point, I will have a better experience, since I now know what I'm actually getting into without the hype. But that leaves the question, have you read ecchi manga, and how do you think Sundome ranks among those? I probably won't seek out more stories in the ecchi category, but considering that I only got to read one in that category, I am actually quite happy that that got to be Sundome. So, Sundome, have you read it? What do you think about it? And do you agree or disagree with my quote-unquote disappointed review? That is not that disappointed. I still gave it a lot of praise in the end. I still think it is a fine manga. So, what do you think? Comment below and me your thoughts. And as always, we'll see you in the next video. Remember to stay awesome. Bye! The next manga I'm gonna review for you is gonna be a tough one, but we'll get to that at some point. See ya.